He wasn't supposed to be there, at least, that's what she thought. A young black teen, nervous but proud, clutching his boarding pass to first class, a seat he'd earned, not borrowed. But before the plane even left the gate, whispers started. Eyes followed. The passengers watched in silence, some amused, others uncomfortable, as she humiliated him in front of everyone. He tried to explain, but no one listened. No one ever does. But what she didn't know was who had bought that ticket. What she didn't know was that the man walking down the jet bridge, the one everyone suddenly stood for, was his father. And in the next few minutes, this flight would go from routine to unforgettable, exposing not just arrogance, but the kind of racism money can't hide. Because this time, power was about to sit right next to her. But before we get to that moment, tell me, where are you watching this from right now? Malik was 16, a high school honor student who dreamed of being a pilot one day. He'd been fascinated with planes since he was a little boy, how they soared, how they defied gravity. His father, Charles Freeman, was a man who had built everything from the ground up, a self-made CEO in the aviation industry. That morning, Malik was taking his first solo flight to visit his aunt for the summer. His father had upgraded him to first class as a surprise, telling him, "You deserve to see the world from the front seat for once." Malik smiled, not realizing how much that seat would reveal about the world he lived. The airport buzzed with its usual chaos, announcements echoing, people rushing, and coffee cups spilling. Malik kept to himself, quiet and respectful. He double-checked his boarding pass, first class, seat 2A. He walked onto the plane with confidence, trying to look like he belonged, even though he'd never sat up front before. But the moment he stepped through the door, the atmosphere shifted. The flight attendant, Rebecca, looked him up and down. Her smile flickered, then vanished. "Excuse me," she said, blocking his path. "First class is for premium passengers. Are you sure you're in the right section?" Malik froze, startled. He handed her his ticket, his voice barely steady. "Yes, seat 2A. She scanned it, then looked back at him, still skeptical. "Well," she said tightly, "if this is correct, please take your seat quickly." Her tone wasn't polite, it was dismissive and cold. Passengers turned their heads, some whispering, others pretending not to see. Malik sat down, his heart pounding. He stared out the window, trying to breathe. He thought maybe it was just a misunderstanding. But the looks continued. Minutes later, another attendant leaned over and whispered something to her. Rebecca frowned, walked back to Malik's seat, and said, "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to move to the back. This section is reserved." Malik blinked, confused. "But my ticket," I said. "Move," she snapped. Her voice was louder now. Passengers watched, some curious, others uncomfortable, but no one said a word. His chest tightened. He reached into his pocket, hands trembling, showing his ticket again. "Please, it says first class." But she didn't even look. "We'll sort that out in economy," she said. And just like that, the humiliation began. Every step he took toward the back felt like a mile. Eyes followed him, phones recorded quietly. He felt smaller with each stare, smaller than the space between seats. But before he could take another step, the sound of polished shoes echoed down the aisle. Calm, measured, confident. A man's voice spoke firmly behind him. "Is there a problem here?" Everyone turned. The man standing in the doorway was dressed in a dark suit, posture steady, eyes sharp. It was Charles Freeman. Rebecca straightened immediately. "Oh, sir, welcome aboard. We were just resolving a seat mix-up." Charles looked at Malik, then back at her. "A mix-up?" he asked quietly. "My son's seat, 2A, was that the mix-up?" She stammered, "Oh, I didn't realize." But he cut her off gently. "You didn't realize a young black man could belong in first class." The cabin fell silent. Even the hum of the engines seemed to fade. Rebecca flushed. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. The captain peeked from the cockpit, sensing tension. Charles placed a calm hand on Malik's shoulder. "Sit down, son," he said. "You're exactly where you belong." Malik's throat tightened. For the first time, he didn't feel small. The plane took off in silence. Rebecca avoided their aisle the entire flight, sending another attendant instead. Malik stared out the window, still shaken but grounded by his father's quiet strength. He realized then that racism doesn't always scream, it whispers, hides behind smiles, and pretends to be protocol. But sometimes, the right person in the right seat can make the whole world listen. The plane touched down in silence. No applause. No idle chatter. Just the weight of everything that had unfolded in the air between takeoff and landing. When the seatbelt sign blinked off, Malik stayed seated. He didn't rush to leave. Neither did his father. They both sat there, letting the moment breathe the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. Rebecca avoided their eyes as she passed through the aisle, her earlier confidence gone. The supervisor mumbled an apology that sounded rehearsed and empty, like it had been practiced 100 times before. But Charles didn't respond. He didn't need to. The truth had already done its work. As they stepped off the plane, passengers glanced their way, some nodding in quiet respect, others looking away in shame. A few stopped Malik just outside the gate. "I saw what happened," one man said softly. "I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that." Malik nodded. For the first time that day, he smiled not out of happiness but out of understanding. Because this wasn't just his story. It was the story of anyone who's ever been told they don't belong. Later that week, a video of the incident surfaced online. Someone had recorded everything, the confrontation, the words, the silence that followed. Within hours, it went viral. Headlines called it the flight that exposed the sky's hidden bias. The airline released a statement. The attendant was suspended. Training programs were reviewed. And yet, beneath the noise, one truth remained unchanged. Policies can shift, but hearts take longer. For Malik, the experience didn't end when he stepped off that plane. It changed something deeper. It stripped away the illusion that success could shield him from prejudice. But it also gave him a stronger purpose. He began speaking about that flight at schools, youth programs, and even corporate events. Not as a victim, but as a voice. A reminder that respect shouldn't depend on a seat number or a last name. His father watched proudly, knowing that what had started as humiliation had become a platform for hope. The story that once broke Malik's confidence was now inspiring others to rise, to speak, and to refuse silence. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all. Sometimes injustice doesn't just expose what's wrong. It reveals who we are and who we have the courage to become. Because for every Malik who gets told to move back, there's another young person watching wondering if the world will ever see them differently. So the question isn't whether racism still exists. We've seen the answer 1,000 times, in 1,000 ways. The real question is, when will we stop pretending not to notice? When will first class stop being about who looks like they belong, and start being about who deserves respect? Because at the end of every story like this, one truth remains: we can't change what we won't confront. And silence, no matter how polite, only keeps the seat empty for the next injustice to sit down. If this story moved you, don't let it fade here. Leave a comment below. What would you have done if you were on that flight? Like this video to help more people see it. And subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us why respect should never be a privilege.